The Institute of Economic Affairs warns that a disposable vape ban being considered at the moment by the government could be harmful.
Yes, they say that 35% of adult vapers use disposables, and banning them might push some of those adults back to smoking.
The IEA goes on instead to suggest that enforcing existing laws against underage vaping could be used instead of a broad-based ban.
Well, there are plenty of concerns that these vapes are aimed at children too.
Well, joining us now is Christopher Snowdon, Head of Lifestyle Economics at the IEA, and John Dunne from the UK Vaping Industry. Thank you both for being with us today. John, let's start with you. It's clear, isn't it, that some of these brightly coloured highlighter-style vaping pens are aimed at children.
Well, what's clear is that some of the products that are illegally on the market, yes, are aimed towards that demographic. Well, this is just highlights some of the issues with the current legislation. And one of the things that we've been asking the government to do is to ask MHRA, who regulates vaping products in this country, to look at things like packaging and product design, which they're not doing at the moment. And this is allowing a lot of these products that are coming in using cartoon characters, for instance, or ripping off well-known IP to survive in this marketplace. And the second issue is that there's very little monetary disincentive for companies not to do this. Where are the big fines that the UK VIA has been calling for? The fact is they don't exist.
And Christopher Snowdon, let's bring you in at this point, because you are from the Institute of Economic Affairs, and you are concerned, aren't you, that if you push this ban on disposable vapes, then adults that were smoking, moved over to vapes, will then find their way back to smoking, which we know is more harmful.
Yeah, that is absolutely one of the concerns. Also, of course, the teenagers who are currently using these products may well decide to start smoking. Plus, you've got the issue that John's already mentioned there about the illegal vapes, the black market vapes, which is a point that's often underlooked. It's not just that you've got retailers selling vapes to people underage illegally. It's that the vapes themselves are very often illegal, unregulated. And we're not enforcing these laws as it is, apparently. We're not enforcing the littering law, which is another issue people have with disposable vapes. All the laws we need to deal with this issue are already available. If we ban disposable vapes, are we going to even enforce that law? If you look at Australia, where they've had repeated bans on e-cigarettes, and in fact, e-cigarettes with nicotine have never been legal. They've actually got more youth vapers in Australia than we do here. So we need to take enforcement a lot more seriously rather than just banning things, because, as you say, there is a very strong chance that at least some of the people, some of the many adults who've taken on disposable vapes in the last couple of years will revert to smoking.
John, to what extent is it the fault of your industry that there are clearly children walking into corner shops up and down the country? There will be children going into corner shops this morning, walking up, buying vapes that are legally on the market, but not legally able to be sold to children, and they'll be buying them without any questions asked.
Well, I think Chris brings up a very good point, and it's something that we've been pushing for again as an industry. We want to see the regulations that are currently in place enforced, but enforced with massive penalties. So we want to see stores that are selling vape products to be regulated, and part of that has to include, like alcohol, robust age verification processes in place. And secondly, stores that do break the law need to be punished. They need to have massive fines that make it financially, the financial disincentive for them to do it. Right now, stores are not being fined, so there's no disincentive for a retailer to sell to children. I don't buy the excuse that some retailers use. They go, "We didn't know it was illegal." I'm sorry, but everybody knows it's not legal to sell these products to minors. But unless there's the £10,000 fine that we're asking the government to implement, unless that's in place, nothing's going to change. Now, I find it funny that the government has announced that they're going to do that for cigarettes, but not for e-cigarettes, and I want to know why.
OK, Chris, I mean, digging into these stats here, your figures from the IEA, it is absolutely fascinating, isn't it? The cigarette use amongst teenagers has almost totally fallen off, 4% down to just 1% of teenagers smoking since 2012. 7.6% are now smoking vapes. But don't you have concerns, as though we don't know enough about vapes still? They still could be harmful.
Oh yeah, of course. No one denies that there might be some risk in some way. I mean, I've been vaping for 13 years and seem to be doing okay. If anybody wants to study me, they're very welcome to. Depends what you call the long term, I guess. What we do know has been established by health agencies all over the world is that it's very unlikely that vapes carry anything like, well, they say it's at least 95% safer, and it could well be 99, who knows what it is, but it's a lot safer. Point is, though, kids shouldn't be using them. They're primarily designed for adult smokers. Adult smokers are their main user base, and indeed adult ex-smokers like myself. So let's try and keep it that way. But there is no precedent that I can think of a product being banned completely just because children are getting a hold of it. You know, children find it more difficult, I think, to get hold of vodka and cigarettes than they do with vapes, and that's something that the government needs to work on. But nobody talks about banning vodka because kids are getting hold of it. This seems to me unprecedented, a huge overreaction, and a failure of law enforcement.
John, just to end with you, I know you'll be talking to the government all the time in this sort of scoping exercise that is being undertaken now. How likely do you think it is that the government genuinely wants to ban these disposable vapes? Or is this just sort of placating a pretty loud lobby group and they'll come up with something more akin to enforcement rather than an outright ban?
Well, we're lucky in this country that we have a government and a health department that understands the value of vaping. It is the most successful way that adults quit smoking in this country. It's more successful than all of the other methods combined. So they don't want to mess with that because they do have a smoking cessation goal of 2030 in the UK. Ash came out with a report this month that said in the lower income areas, that's probably going to be closer to 2050. So we have to encourage more adult smokers to look at safer alternatives to get them off of smoking. But absolutely, we have to make sure that young people are not easily getting these products. And that's where we need to cut it off at source at these rogue retailers who are breaking the law. That's where the problem lies.
Well, John Dunne from the UK Vaping Association, or Industry Association, I'd say, and Chris Snowdon from the Institute of Economic Affairs, thank you both for a very interesting discussion there.